The black ship was approaching from a distance, and soon it was less than a few dozen miles away from the ship Jason and the others were in. At this distance, with the strength of the strong gods, one could even see the shadowy figures on the black ship. The other party's ship is more advanced than ours, so this is going to be tricky. At some point, Thomas and others had already arrived on the bow of the ship, all of them looking calm and extremely serious. The ship of their Muya Chamber of Commerce is considered to be top-notch among the prefecture-level ships and is extremely fast. However, although the opponent's ship is also a prefecture-level ship, it is obviously better than Thomas's ship. Obviously, it is impossible to get rid of the opponent just by relying on speed, and the pirates who can own such a ship are definitely not just ordinary people. On the vast sea, some guests in the cabin originally hoped that the arrival of pirates would increase their popularity, but at this time, no one spoke, and their expressions were extremely serious. The two sides met dozens of miles away, and two figures suddenly appeared in front of the black ship. The next moment, boom! Two giant flame dragons that were tens of feet long appeared out of thin air on the sea, roared, and fiercely charged towards the ship where Jason and the others were. Waves splashed all over the sky, and countless water splashed on the two flaming dragons. Suddenly, dense mist evaporated, and a scorching momentum rushed towards Jason and the others. The flaming dragons directly hit Jason and the others' ship. Thomas on the bow looked gloomy, waved his hand, and two shock waves suddenly hit the khaki battle axe in his hand, colliding with the flame dragon. Violent roars resounded, and the sea water rose into the sky. It was like a Category 12 hurricane blowing on the Thunder Sea. Jason and his ship shook violently under the impact and couldn't help but stop. In fact, the opponent's fire dragon attack only stopped Jason's ship. In the entire ship, except for a few members of the Muya Chamber of Commerce who controlled the ship, and a few staff members who only had the strength of the upper spiritual gods, the rest of the guards and many guests rushed to the bow of the ship. Who? The flames dispersed. Dozens of strong men exuding a terrifying aura surrounded Jason and his ship. Dozens of moonlight gods? Thomas and others' expressions changed, and their hearts sank, feeling extremely troubled. The dozens of strong men who surrounded their ship were all at the level of the Moonglory god, and there was not even a Starglory god. Sir, we're in a bit of trouble. I'm afraid I'm going to expose some of my strength. Chi-Ji's voice came from the side. Into Jason's ear. Jason nodded. He couldn't help but frown. With their strength, it can be seen at a glance that the opponent's strength suppresses their own. In the vast sea of thunder, dozens of strong men surrounded a ship. These pirates were all staring at Jason and the others in front of them, with a ferocious smile on their lips, as if wolves were watching a group of sheep. Young master. I didn't expect that we would encounter a fat sheep when we came out this time. If we can snatch it and give it to the leader, I think the elders on the island will never dare to talk about the things you did before, young master. A thin middle-aged man with a sharp mouth and monkey cheeks came to a young man in the team wearing a luxurious robe and spoke coldly. The young man had a cold smile on his lips, and he was very proud of himself. He Mang is the young master of a pirate Black Rock Island near the sea area. This Black Rock Island is a pirate alliance. All pirates near the sea area have bases stationed here, his father. He is the leader of the Black Rock Island Pirate Alliance and the most powerful force in the Pirate Alliance. It's just that he neglected his duties and often caused some trouble because of his father's status. Therefore, he was very unpopular on Black Rock Island and would be looked down upon by some other pirate organizations. It was just for his father's sake. Na Meng caused trouble, and the rest of the pirate organizations could only endure their anger. A few days ago, a pirate organization captured a ship on the sea. That ship was owned by a large family on land. Among them were the direct female relatives of that big family, after the pirate organization captured the people. He sent people to spread the news and asked the big family to pay a ransom, saying that as long as the ransom was received, the female family members of their family could be released. Although the big family was quite large on land, the sea was not their territory, so they could only break their teeth and swallow it, agreeing to this condition. Unexpectedly, after knowing the news, Shiming ran to the base of the island gang, and while the leader of the island organization was away, he raped the female family members of the big family, which directly caused the business to go bad. The leader of the pirate organization was naturally furious and sent a letter to the alliance asking for justice. Although Shiming's father was the leader of the alliance, he could only rest in peace when faced with such a thing. He paid a large sum of money and even punished Shiming severely. He cursed a lot. Shiming was so angry that he took a group of his men out to wander around. Unexpectedly, they encountered the Muya Chamber of Commerce's ship, and he suddenly became excited. Huh! In the sky, many pirates stepped back and Mang Mang came in front of everyone. Haha, everyone, I am Shiming from Black Rock Island. You all hand over your space rings to me obediently, and then go back with us. Maybe there will be a way out by then. Otherwise, hum. He snorted with a proud look on his face. He could already imagine how others would look at him if he took such a boatload of people back. Didn't I just ask you to lose 1 billion divine stones, and you actually scolded me? I'm your biological son. The ship I grabbed this time is probably worth 5 billion. Let's see what else you have to say. Shiming was still very angry at his father, who had scolded him angrily not long ago. Black Rock Island? It's really that place. We avoided it so far, but we still encountered it. Thomas's heart tightened. As a person who runs the sea all year round, he is naturally very familiar with Black Rock Island. People who are traveling in the Thunder Sea will take the initiative to try their best to get out of the way. But even so, the people from Black Rock Island will still scatter to investigate. Once you find the target, you will lead a group of people to rush forward. This time, Thomas had already taken the initiative to bypass Black Rock Island for nearly 100,000 miles, but he didn't expect to be caught. What Thomas didn't know was that the man was angry after being scolded by his father. He drove the boat outwards in a fit of anger, and was hit by it. He could only blame him for his bad luck. This is a friend of Black Rock Island. Thomas stood on the bow of the ship and shouted, "We are just ordinary businessmen. I understand the rules of the Thunder Sea. We are willing to offer a wealth of 100 million sacred stones as travel expenses, please. You can let us pass." As soon as Thomas said this, everyone on the boat looked at the young man. "Let you go? Are you dreaming?" The young man sneered. It was a rare opportunity to show off in front of his father. How could he give up? Thomas's face suddenly changed. There were nearly 50 moonlight gods on the other side. Although there were more than 100 on his side, there were not many moonlight gods. Except for the 15 in his own chamber of commerce, even if including a dozen of the dozens of guests, there were about 30, so it was obvious that our side was at a disadvantage. Thomas looked at the young man coldly. Aren't you confused? Don't you understand the rules of the sea? Isn't it enough to give you 1 billion sacred stones? Then how much do you want? I believe you also understand that if you want to deal with us, even if you succeed, I'm afraid more than half of you will die, and the gains will not be worth the losses. I don't think you know this, right? Everyone on the Chamber of Commerce ship was anxious and looked at the young man. Although Thomas asked questions, he still had some confidence. He knew very well the habits of these robbers, bullying the weak and fearing the strong. Even if the robbers are sure to kill all their targets, they will still consider whether their losses are worth it. And now Jason and his group have a total of 30 moonlight gods and nearly 100 starlight gods, which is obviously a tough nut to crack. Although there are 50 of them, they may not be able to kill Thomas and the others. After all, people reveal their greatest potential when they survive. Everyone will fight hard, but the pirates will not. Young master, do you want to take action? A moonlight god behind Shiming asked softly, why don't we ask for more and let them pass? He did not want the two sides to fight. This time the young master came out, and they were the guards. The young master has no intention of fighting, and Jason and his team are not weak in strength. Normally, it would not matter. If the other party tries their best and the young master is injured, their group of guards will definitely not be able to do anything when they return to Black Rock Island. Eat the good fruit. One thing more is naturally better than one thing less. When Mang Mang heard what the other party said, he couldn't help but glared at him coldly, and then turned to look at Thomas with a ferocious smile on his face. You don't understand the rules? Hey, I really don't understand the rules anymore. Shi Meng squinted his eyes. Since you are unwilling to surrender, then I will kill you until you surrender. Do it for me. Shi Meng suddenly shouted angrily and said towards Thomas, and others waved their hands and launched a fierce attack. Ordinary bandits may follow the rules of the sea in order to reduce casualties, but how could Meng, who wanted to show off in front of his father and many other pirate organizations, be willing to give up this opportunity? The expressions of Thomas and others were stunned. They did not expect that it would end like this. Are you taking action? Jason frowned. Kill them all, until they agree. Thomas roared angrily. Suddenly, a large group of moonlight gods behind Shiming rushed forward as fast as possible. In an instant, the waves roared, waves of terrifying divine power filled the sea surface, and the terrifying aura spread, shaking the world. Boom! 50 moonlight gods launched an attack on Jason and the others almost at the same time, and saw bright rainbow lights shooting towards Jason and his group. It's over now. Some star gods were already in despair. Fight, kill them all. If we are defeated, we will be dead. Only by killing them will we have a chance of survival. Thomas also roared angrily and was the first to rise into the sky. Damn it, even if you die, you have to kill a few of them. Someone roared hysterically. Yes, it's not that easy to kill me. It's not certain who will win and who will lose. Everyone on the ship roared and rose into the sky one by one. Everyone was going crazy for their own lives. This is a critical moment of life and death crisis, and no one is desperate. Boom! A deafening roar resounded, and a huge divine power aura stirred, like the sky was shattering, waves of waves sweeping into the sky, and the two sides launched a fierce battle in midair. The battle locations of both sides coincided with avoiding the location of the ship. Thomas and the others naturally did not want to damage the ship, and the pirates had the same mentality. After all, if the ship was damaged, their profits would be greatly reduced. Boom! 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 After the violent explosion, the nearly 50 pirates turned into phantoms one after another, with thunder shining on them, flames spurting, or strong winds blowing. 10 people rushed up in a swarm. The two teams collided fiercely. In just one confrontation, people on both sides were injured. Jason even saw that 2 star gods on his side were hit in this chaotic attack. They didn't even hum. Broken apart, they fell into the sea. The 5 Chiji people gathered around Jason. This group of 6 people naturally attracted the attention of some strong men on the other side. Suddenly, there was a team of more than 10 moonlight gods. They rushed towards where Jason and others were. Haha, die. The 10 people looked ferocious, and they jointly launched a swift and violent attack towards the location of the 6 Jasons. 10 streams of various colors, containing infinite divine power, immediately rushed into Jason's team. Pfft, came the sound of a series of attacks entering the body. Except for Jason, who was blocked behind him, each of the 5 Chiji people suffered more or less several attacks. After the 10 pirates launched their attack, they immediately rushed in front of Chiji and others. Seeing that his previous attack was successful, every face showed excitement, and the weapons in their hands attacked Chiji and the others one after another. The 5 people from Chiji dodged one after another, and for a while they were evenly matched. Sir, what should we do now? Without Jason's instructions, Chi-Ji and the others naturally did not dare to reveal their strength. Jason looked around the battlefield. Ah! Kill! Go to hell! Crazy roars sounded one after another from the side of the Muya Chamber of Commerce. Everyone seemed to be going crazy, their eyes were red, and they were attacking desperately, because everyone knew that if they didn't fight hard at this moment, if the opponent won by the end of the battle, an extremely miserable ending would be waiting for them. Kill them all, leave no one behind. Xiameng was protected by 10 powerful moonlight gods. He rushed into the battlefield like a wolf among sheep, and when he saw the people of Muya Chamber of Commerce working so hard, he immediately let out an angry roar. Originally, he was planning to capture everyone and take them back to Black Rock Island, but now he changed his mind. In anger, he decided not to leave anyone alive. Pfft! A Yuhui god of the Muya Chamber of Commerce was slashed by the opponent, and his blood flowed profusely. But he didn't even frown. He struck with his backhand, forcing the opponent away, and then roared and charged forward again. Kill! Thomas, as the leader of the fleet, also led Juhuishan God to rush towards the Shiming team. He naturally knew how to capture the thief and capture the king, as long as he killed Na Meng. Perhaps this battle will end before our side can no longer resist. Boom! Several figures rushed forward desperately, but under the resistance of the 10 guards, besides Xiameng, they couldn't even get close. Each of the 10 guards of Shiming is a strong man at the peak of Yuhui God, with extraordinary strength. As the young master's personal bodyguards, they naturally know the importance of the young master's safety. If the young master is even slightly injured, when they return to Black Rock Island to face them, they will be punished by the adult's anger, so each one of them is desperate. The two sides fought together, blood flying everywhere and limbs splattered everywhere. Haha, kill everyone for me. Anyone who dares to resist me, Master Xiameng, will die. Shiming was still drinking loudly at this moment, with a look of madness and excitement in control of everything on his face. It was tragic, extremely tragic. Although the battle had only started for a moment, not many people on both sides died, but the tragic atmosphere of blood dripping, roaring, and bravely killing the enemy was still caught in Jason's eyes. But Jason could see that although the two sides were evenly matched on the surface and there were no obvious casualties, the gap in strength between the two was too great. No matter how hard the people of the Muya Chamber of Commerce tried their best, they would probably die in the battle. Ending. Sir, what should we do? Chi-Ji's voice came again. Wait for me to take action first. After I take action, prepare to kill as much as you want. Jason's mouth showed a hint of coldness, and his spiritual consciousness transmitted to the 5 Chi-Ji people. At the same time, the 5 elements of divine power in his body suddenly rioted. Jason looked indifferently at the 50 Moonlight God pirates who were killing and attacking crazily. Buzz! Strange 5-color rainbow lights suddenly appeared between the sky and the earth, scattering like fireworks, and instantly enveloped everyone on the battlefield. What happened? The nearly 200 people who were fighting were all stunned, but the attacks in their hands did not stop, and they did not dare to be careless at all. Boom! The countless rainbow lights suddenly bloomed with bright light, spreading out in all directions like ripples of ocean waves, and the energy of chaos spread out. In an instant, the entire battlefield was hazy, and all sides were invisible, with only white light flowing. Endless coercion spread and enveloped everyone. Even the ships of the Muya Chamber of Commerce not far away were shrouded in white mist at this moment. Nearly 200 strong men who were fighting suddenly felt that everything in front of them was white, and everything around them was foggy, as if they were trapped in an endless fog. This fog was so thick that they could not even see clearly within 1 meter of their surroundings. Some strong men were clearly fighting before, and even the opponent's long knife was slashing at themselves. However, the white mist dispersed, and the enemies they were fighting with before disappeared without knowing where they were. What's going on? What happened? Ah! Everyone exclaimed, thinking that it was the opponent's strong man using his methods. They were all frightened and attacked frantically in all directions. Boom! The bright attacks disappeared into the white mist, as if they had disappeared into the sea, and there was no sound at all. These white lights are exactly the formations used by Jason. With Jason's current attainments in formations, he can easily perform 5th-grade formations without any deliberate arrangement. Jason stood in the middle of the formation, with divine light flowing from his body. Where does this formation come from? Is there any formation master in the opponent's team? The 50 pirates on Black Rock Island looked around in surprise. After a brief panic, they also understood that this should be someone's formation. The formations used by each strong man suddenly used their own methods in an attempt to break through the formation. However, with their strength, how could they see through the formation set up by Jason? Suddenly, they all looked like headless flies. Pfft! A figure flashed past, and a moonlight god suddenly fell to the ground. Is it really a massacre? The figure shook his head. It was GG. With the strength of the 5 of them, under normal circumstances, any one of them could kill the 50 powerful moonlight gods, but in this Jason's formation among them, it is even easier. Killing a weak god is like crushing an ant. Ah! A strong man at the peak of the moonlight god angrily slashed the place in front of him with a knife. The terrifying divine power spurted out desperately, but it could only create a tiny ripple and was unable to break through the formation at all. Damn, how could this happen? The weak god was anxious. But at this moment, a burly man slowly walked out of the place where he had attacked before. Is it you? The weak god's eyes widened as he recognized this big man who had been among the crowd of the Muya Chamber of Commerce. His whole body trembled, and he suddenly raised the sword in his hand. But before he could take out the sword, the opponent grinned at him and punched him in the head, causing his head to explode instantly. His soul was shattered, and only one law chain fell. It's so easy to kill people like this. Longtas smiled lightly, and his figure disappeared into the white mist again. How could this happen? How could this happen? In the formation, Xiameng, who was surrounded by 10 guards before but was now alone, was extremely panicked. Huh! The white mist in front of him suddenly rippled, and Jason with black hair walked out. Is he your kid? Xiameng was horrified. You can't kill me. I am the son of the owner of Black Rock Island. If you kill me, the entire Black Rock Island will not let you go. He has never participated in the event because of his pride. In any brutal actual battle, despite his strength as the Moonlight God, at this time, fear has completely occupied his heart. He even no longer had the courage to wield the sword like those pirates before, so he could only use what he thought was the most intimidating weapon. Force identity. The son of the owner of Black Rock Island? Jason smiled coldly, and the black heavy sword in his hand suddenly drew a stream of light and came to the opponent's face. No! Ximing screamed in horror. At this time, he thought of using a weapon to block it, but it was already too late. The black épée pierced his head directly, and instantly blasted his head into powder. What rubbish! Jason shook his head and put away his space ring and law chain. Others might be afraid of the Black Rock Island, but Jason was not afraid at all. If he provoked him, he went directly to the Black Rock Island to set up a large formation, and it was not impossible to uproot the entire Black Rock Island. This dozens of nautical miles away, on the black pirate ship that Ximeng was on, the 2 moonlight gods who stayed behind were shocked when they saw the chaotic white light that suddenly expanded and enveloped everything. They drove the ship and docked there far away. They didn't dare to approach, but they didn't dare to leave. They could only watch from a distance. Who? Suddenly, a figure rushed out from the white light and rushed towards their ship at high speed. Quick, retreat! When the personnel on the ship saw it, they were immediately horrified. They controlled the ship and retreated quickly, because the man who rushed out had black hair and was not a member of their Black Rock Island staff at all. However, the figure was so fast that it arrived at their ship in an instant. Buzz! An invisible ripple spread out, which contained a terrifying soul impact. The two Yuhui gods couldn't react at all, but they were knocked out by the soul impact. The black-haired figure was Jason. Take it! A tall blue pagoda suddenly appeared in the void. Jason controlled the God of War tower, and a blue light suddenly emerged from the bottom of the God of War tower. The hundreds of meters long black pirate ship enveloped it, sucking the entire ship into it. When we get to Thunder Island, I can ask someone to re-refiner the control system, so that we can set off on our own even without a ship, but we still need a complete sea map. Jason smiled slightly, and dodged again. Return to the formation. In the formation, Thomas and many other guards and guests from the Muya Chamber of Commerce were looking at the sudden appearance of the formation in fear. But suddenly, the chaotic white mist in the sky disappeared strangely, revealing more than 100 people among them, none other than Jason and his group. It sounds slow, but in fact, the whole process of formation and disappearance of the formation only takes about a minute or two. However, the nearly 50 bandits on Black Rock Island who were so majestic before and killed all the bandits in all directions are now dead. Only the ones on the sea are following. Bodies floating on the waves. It also indicates their previous existence. All the surviving Muya Chamber of Commerce guards and guests looked around with confusion on their faces, not understanding what happened. What happened? The white mist before was probably some kind of formation. Could it be that a strong person took action and eliminated those pirates for us? Nearly 50 strong Yuhui gods fell instantly. This strong, who could it be? On the vast sea of thunder, waves surged. Many people also recovered from their surprise, speculating about what happened before. No matter who it is, we are saved this time. Thomas's deep voice sounded, and his eyes looked around at the dozens of guests. He also paused slightly for the Jason 6. He knew that this strong man was probably among the guests on their ship. Who was the strong man who used the formation just now? Everyone who was lucky enough to survive. He looked at the other people around him, but the faces of the other people present were also blank. Yeah, who is it? Longta's voice sounded angrily, his face pretending to be confused. The waves were rolling, and more than 100 strong men looked at each other, but deep in their eyes was the joy of surviving the disaster. This guy Longtas's performance also made Chiji and the others want to laugh. Since the strong man is unwilling to show up, and obviously does not want to reveal his identity, we should not delve into it further. Perhaps, the strong man may not be among our group. Thomas's deep voice sounded, no matter where the other party was. Since he was not among his group, and since he did not want to expose his identity, Thomas did not want to dig deeper and make the other party unhappy. With the strength of that strong man, he might even destroy the entire ship. It's all a piece of cake. Yes, now that all the pirates on Black Rock Island are dead, let's not waste time and set off quickly. Someone among the guests also said. By the way, what about the pirate ship? Suddenly someone seemed to have thought of something. He looked towards where the pirate ship was, but it was empty. Nothing at all. In such a short time, it is impossible for the pirate ship to sail away from our sight. I am afraid it was sunk by that strong man. In that case, let's set off. Many people spoke out one after another. So many powerful men had been killed within the Black Rock Island, and the young man from before seemed to still have a high status on the Black Rock Island, so no one was willing to stay here. Whoosh, the Muya Chamber of Commerce's ship set off again, heading through the waves in the direction of Thunder Island. After the previous battle, the atmosphere in the cabin seemed a bit strange. Some people's faces were filled with joy of surviving the disaster, but some people's faces were not very good-looking. After all, although there was no damage in the previous battle, several strong men died. But whether they were happy or sad, almost everyone's eyes secretly glanced at some of the guests, thinking about who was most likely to be the hidden peerless strong man. Hey, who do you think that strong man is? The blonde and fair-skinned young man next to Jason and the others only suffered a minor injury in the battle just now, but it has already healed. He was discussing with Jason and the others excitedly. There shouldn't be that strong person among the people in the Namuya Chamber of Commerce, because they don't need to hide at all. The most likely ones are the dozens of us who took the boat. That team of people is not like them. They should be the ones before someone has died. That short, big man? It doesn't look like that. I think he was hit in the shoulder by a moonlight god from the opponent before and almost died. The blonde young man analyzed them one by one and was startled when he saw the 6 Jasons, couldn't help but said with a smile, "It can't be the 6 of you, right?" Before Jason could say anything, he shook his head again and said, "It's not like that, all 5 of them call you, sir, your strength is only average. It seems that you are a child of a big family. There is no need for people like you to hide your strength." The blonde young man glanced at the other single people. "Since you don't want to show it, there must be some special reason, like that people are usually alone and should not be in groups of several people. Looking at who is alone in the cabin and has not been injured before, it is most likely." The blonde young man bowed, very sure. "Why do you care so much, as long as we are safe?" Longtas chuckled. The blonde young man never imagined that everyone in Jason's group was hiding their strength. "You're right, we were really lucky this time, otherwise we would have almost perished before." After hearing what Longtas said, the relaxed expression of the blonde young man also became solemn, and he was very emotional. The previous situation was indeed very dangerous. An accident might have resulted in everyone's demise. In the world of gods, there is no truly safe place, especially those who travel. They are always in danger and may fall at any time. The waves are rolling, the sea wind is howling, and the ships of the Chamber of Commerce are speeding on the sea. Jason, they did not expect that Black Rock Island would be in chaos at this moment. When Shiming fell, his life tablet stored in his father's space ring on Black Rock Island also turned into powder with a bang. What? T looked at the shattered life tablet in her space ring in disbelief. She stood up suddenly, her eyes suddenly turned red. Come on, come on. Ti's roaring voice was instantly transmitted. Island Master. Several guards on duty outside the door rushed in as quickly as possible, looking at the angry T in horror. This was the first time they had seen him on Black Rock Island in thousands of years. The island owner was so angry. Immediately notify all the leaders of the pirate organizations on the island and ask them to come to see me within 10 minutes. Then notify me of all the pirate ships outside Black Rock Island. They all go to the number 3C area and search for me a Muya Chamber of Commerce prefecture-level vessel. Once you see a ship, you must intercept it. Tian roared with fire. What he didn't know was that his running away from home was actually under the control of his father. On Black Rock Island, no movement could be hidden from the island owner, and the helmsman of the ship on which he was riding was always he will report his location and Xian Meng's whereabouts every once in a while. The previous behavior of Meng Meng in snatching Jason's ship also happened to allow the helmsman of the pirate ship to pass back before he was killed by Jason. Yes, the guard responded and immediately exited the island. The whole hall was silent, and T stood there blankly. The next moment, my son, why are you dead? T suddenly let out a shrill roar, like a wild beast roaring, rumbled, and instantly, his eyes turned red and ferocious, like a wounded beast. Zoming, no matter who kills you, I will definitely avenge you. You bastards of the Muya Chamber of Commerce, I will cut you into pieces. The painful roar echoed in the hall for a long time. Soon, many powerful people gathered in the meeting hall on Black Rock Island. All the bandit leaders on the island gathered together, wondering what happened. A large group of strong men with terrifying auras sitting around, there are hundreds of them. Each of these strong men is a strong man at the peak of Yuehui God. They are all murderous. They are definitely not the kind of hothouse like Meng Meng. The Moonlight God who grew up in the hall, and on the left and right sides above the hall, for strong men with even more amazing auras were sitting cross-legged. It was shocking that all of them were sunlight god strongmen. But the seat at the top of the hall was empty. That was the seat of the island owner T. After everyone gathered, T walked gloomily from the back of the hall and came to everyone. "Island owner, I wonder why you are so anxious to call them here." "Yes, it seems that today is not the date for the annual meeting." Many pirate leaders shouted loudly. T came into the hall without saying a word, and her eyes fell directly on a pirate leader at the bottom of the hall. "Momal, my son Xiaming ruined your business before, right?" Ti's deep voice sounded from above the hall. It was unclear whether he was happy or angry, but it gave people an extremely depressing and gloomy feeling. Suddenly, everyone's eyes fell on Namamor, wondering in their hearts, could it be that the purpose of the island owner calling us here has something to do with Namamor? Namamor is the pirate who captured the female family members of the big family before. His strength is at the peak of Yuhui goddess. He is ruthless and powerful. He is also considered the #1 figure on this black rock island. Momo frowned and said, "Island owner, isn't this matter over?" "And island owner, you know everything and have already given us some compensation. Could something happen again?" Momo was very worried. Doubtful, as the leader of Black Rock Island, T is not only powerful, but also extremely fair in handling affairs and will not show favoritism. This is one of the important reasons why he has been able to serve as the leader of Black Rock Island for so long. 1. Now that the old things were brought up again, Momo suddenly had a bad feeling in his heart. What happened again? Yes, something did happen. A hint of ferocity suddenly appeared on Ti's gloomy face, and she stretched out her big hand towards Momo. Boom! A huge palm appeared in the void, flowing with astonishing pressure, and infinite divine power spread out, directly taking it towards Momo. "Master T, what are you?" Momor's face changed, and he was about to resist, but the vast aura fell down, sealing the divine power in his body tightly, just like facing the blue dragon. Rabbit could only widen his eyes in horror as he watched the huge palm wrap around him. "If it weren't for you, how could my son Xiaming die?" A beast-like growl came from Ti's mouth. "Go down and bury him with him." Divine power suddenly gushes out like a flood from a dam. Momol's body twisted instantly, and then, pung. Just like squeezing a piece of tofu, Ti's stretched out big hand directly crushed Momol's whole body. Blood splattered everywhere, and a strong smell of blood suddenly filled the entire hall. Wow! All the pirate leaders who were originally sitting in the hall stood up in panic. Their faces were pale and they looked at T. Everyone present was shocked. "T, Island Master, what are you doing?" Someone trembled. At the same time, I was secretly vigilant. Even the 4 sun gods on the left and right sides stood up at once. He frowned slightly and looked at T. At the top of the hall, Ti's eyes scanned everyone coldly, and said slowly, "Just before. My son Mang died in Sea Area 3. If it wasn't for this Momo, how could he have died? However, the culprit is it's not him, but a ship from the Muya Chamber of Commerce. I summoned you all, because I hope you can send all the ships out to closely monitor the entire sea area near Black Rock Island. If there is any news, inform me immediately. I don't know if you all what do you think?" T seemed to be discussing. But the cold words in his words made everyone present shiver involuntarily. What? Is Mang dead? Is this bad boy finally dead? No wonder the owner of T Island is so angry. Momal is really unjust. Although this matter has something to do with him, he doesn't care about it at all. I didn't do anything wrong. Everyone present felt at peace, and finally understood the reason for Ti's anger. Suddenly, some were gloating about his misfortune. There were some who felt pity for Momal, and some who didn't care. Various emotions were surging in everyone's hearts, but no matter what they were feeling in their hearts, there was always a trace of sadness on their faces. Island Master orders. I must do my best. A loud shout spread in the hall. After a while, everyone in the hall dispersed. The entire Black Rock Island was in a state of turmoil and murderous intent. Whoosh! With the sound of blue waves, a ship was moving at great speed on the sea, riding the wind and waves, and shuttled like an arrow from a string. "Sir, something seems to be wrong." In the cabin, everyone was talking to each other. It was very lively, but where the 6 Jasons were, Chi-Ji frowned slightly. Not only him, but also the Hades Emperor and others on the side looked at the surging waves outside from time to time, seeming to be thinking in their hearts. With Thomas Yuehui's peak strength, he might not have felt anything, but Chi-Ji and the others' astonishing consciousness had unexpectedly discovered that at some point, there were dozens of ships surrounding their ship. Follow from a distance. These ships were far away from the ships of the Muya Chamber of Commerce, and they did not seem to be preparing to approach. They were just holding on from a distance, as if waiting for something. Jason's eyes closed slightly, and occasionally a startling light flashed in his eyes. "It should be the pirate from Black Rock Island, just don't worry about him, just don't mess with us. If you don't know what's good, you will definitely let them have trouble. It's coming and going." Huh? At this moment, Jason was suddenly startled and looked up at the sky, up above. Boom! Thunder roared, and streaks of lightning circulated in the sky. In the faint clouds, 5 figures, like divine kings walking out of the thunder, suddenly appeared on the bow of the Muya Chamber of Commerce. Among them was a burly and strong man with a big hand. Pressed directly onto the bow. Boom! Lands collapsed, the ground shook, and the ship traveling at high speed on the Thunder Sea seemed to have hit an iceberg. The entire ship suddenly stopped and let out a heart-wrenching scream. What's going on? The hundreds of strong men who were chatting casually on the ship were stunned. The violent impact caused them to rise into the sky instantly from the cabin. At the same time, the members of the Muya Chamber of Commerce who controlled the ship also hurriedly stopped the ship. Down. The waves were surging and the sea wind was roaring, blowing over the bodies of everyone present and making their robes rustle. T and other 5 strong men stood in the sky above the sea, looking indifferently at Jason and others in front of them. One hand forced our ship to stop, and it was able to fly in the clouds. Thomas looked at the 5 people in front of him, and his heart sank. As someone who has been sailing all year round, he knows clearly that only those who are at the level of the sun god can do these 2 things. 5 adults, I wonder how many of them blocked the ships of our Muya Chamber of Commerce. What's the matter? Thomas said with a slightly respectful expression. Tian and the 5 others did not make a sound, but silently glanced at Jason and the other group of people. At the same time, they carefully looked at each person, trying to find out who killed their son. Tian looked at it with brows. He couldn't help but frown. This ship is full of powerful Yuehui gods, how can they kill my son Shiming? Tian cherished her son very much, so she arranged for him to have bodyguards, even though they were only Yuemeng. The strongest men at the peak of Hui Tian God, but all of them are masters who survived countless battles, especially those closest to them. They complement each other and unite with each other. The team of ordinary Yuhuishan God is simply unable to kill them. But before, on the ship where his son was on, all the 50 powerful Yuehui Tianshan fell. Not even one of them could escape, and they didn't even have time to send the signal back. T didn't believe it, just because of the opponent's ship more than 100 people on the ship were able to do this, and it was obvious that there was definitely a strong person hiding among them. Who are these strong men? They stopped us, but didn't say a word. Thomas and others couldn't help but feel a little angry, but they didn't dare to express it at all. Look at the appearance of the strong man among these 5 people, his eyebrows, his nose, his mouth. Suddenly, the trembling voice of a Chamber of Commerce guard sounded in Thomas's ears. Looking at the appearance? Thomas frowned and looked immediately. He didn't pay attention to it before, but this look. Thomas had a look of shock on his face. Not only him, but many people also saw this at this moment. The appearance of the strong man in the center was very similar to the young man who was killed by them before, except for the age difference and wrinkles on the face. they were almost carved from the same mold, which shocked everyone present. They all thought of a possibility. Could he be? Was the young man who was killed a relative of this strong man? Ti's face was cold, and a cruel smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. She glanced at Thomas and the others. You ask me what's the matter? Of course there is something. I am the owner of Black Rock Island, T. The man you just killed is my son. What? The owner of Black Rock Island? That young man is his son? Everyone present was shocked. Although they had been mentally prepared, when they really learned Ti's identity, everyone still couldn't help feeling cold and frightened in their hearts. How could people who often walk in the Sea of Thunder not know the name of the island owner of Black Rock Island? He is a figure at the level of the sun god, and he is not a weakling among the sun gods. Not to mention him, just Black Rock Island is the same. They are the 4 deputy island masters of the sun god. If you pull any one of them out, you can easily kill everyone present. It's over now. The young man from before turned out to be the son of the owner of Black Rock Island. Many people have begun to despair. T himself and the other 4 deputy island owners of Black Rock Island were just standing in mid-air, but the power they naturally exuded while talking frightened everyone present. Everyone knew that they really wanted to fight. This group of people can't even let each other get hurt. Now do you know you're afraid? Tian's cold face showed a trace of ferocity. When you killed my son, how come you didn't know you were afraid? Tian almost growled. Now I will give you a chance to hand over the murderer of my son. I can leave the whole body of the others. Otherwise, I think you should have heard of my Ti's methods. Ti's indifferently the voice rang out. Everyone present looked at each other. They had all heard of Ti's terror. Once it fell into his hands, it would definitely be a situation worse than death. However, no matter whether they were willing to tell each other out in their hearts, they couldn't hand it over because they didn't know the identity of the strong man at all. Seeing that no one on the other side showed any expression, T was very unhappy. In fact, no matter whether everyone present was willing to hand over the strong man who killed his son, in order to avenge his son, T would never do it. He will let anyone go, and will not kill them easily, but will slowly torture them to death. But now, his idea is shattered. Everyone is very loyal, which is good. It seems that you are not willing to hand over the murderer. It doesn't matter. In that case, I will help you one by one. T said with a ferocious smile on her face, when I catch you all and torture each of you, I think you will be willing to speak out. Ti's eyes glanced at Thomas, the leader of the Chamber of Commerce. You should be the leader of this ship, so let's start with you. Thomas's expression changed slightly. Senior T, it's not that we are unwilling to hand over each other, it's just that we don't know who killed your son. Oh? T had a faint smile on her face, but in everyone's eyes, but a chill filled his body. You mean my son died on his own? Haha, it doesn't matter. No matter whether my son's death has anything to do with you or not, I have identified you anyway. You will run away one by one today. Don't drop it. As soon as the words fell, the 4 sunlight god powerhouses beside T dispersed in an instant. The entire ship was surrounded. Although there were only 5 people on the other side and nearly 200 people on Thomas's side, it felt like being surrounded by thousands of troops. Everyone's faces suddenly turned pale. Many people even trembled uncontrollably. Sir, what should I do? At this moment, the 5 Chiji people were also communicating with Jason. I'll let you be the first to be operated on. I want to see who the murderer is. Tiffany walked towards Thomas with a ferocious face. He didn't believe that once he took action, the murderer of his son would not show up. Whoever was the strongest and the most hidden would be the most likely, because from the obvious point of view. Even if all the people on board the Muya Chamber of Commerce ship were gathered together, none of them had the ability to kill his son. T, right? A voice sounded, and a figure suddenly walked out from the crowd, with long black hair fluttering in the wind, and a pair of black eyes staring indifferently at T not far away. It was Jason. I killed your son, but I don't want to do too much killing. I'll give you 10 seconds. You go. Jason's cold voice sounded. This is obviously the god of Sun Yao. A midterm powerhouse. Being able to serve as the island owner and dominate the Black Rock Island obviously has its own unique relationship. Jason, a little mid-level sun god, is naturally not afraid at all, but after all, he has to stay in this sea of thunder for a very long time, and he doesn't want to do more killings. If not T knows what's good, Jason won't either. Mind letting him live. So it's you. Tishi looked at Jason and the 5 Chi-Ji people surrounding Jason with cold eyes. Immediately he sneered, okay, very good. My son, my father has finally found your murderer. Let's see how my father avenges you. Ti's eyes were filled with angry flames. It's him. Thomas and others behind Jason were shocked. They didn't expect that the hidden strong man turned out to be Jason. Isn't this kid hiding too much? The blonde and fair-skinned young man who was quite familiar with Jason was even more stunned. During the few years in this Thunder Sea, he often chatted with Jason and a group of people, and I thought I knew the other person well, but I didn't expect Jason to hide it so deeply. Hey, didn't you hear that my master asked you to leave? You are still here preparing to die. Get out of here. Seeing that the T5 people were motionless, Longtas couldn't help but screamed. However, the 6 moonlight gods are so arrogant. Does this kid have any special status? T secretly guessed, but with the strength of the 6 of them, they should not be able to kill their own son. Could it be? What secret method was used? T didn't know the situation at that time. What a strong tone. Today, I want to see how you let me die. Tian laughed angrily and couldn't help but snorted, Lao Wu, take action and capture all 6 of them. Yes, brother. Among the 5 Black Rock Island owners, the burly man who had previously forced Jason and his ship to stop spoke in a low voice, and instantly turned into a stream of light, rushing towards the location of Jason and the 6 of them like lightning. And at the same time, he waved his big hand to capture the 6 Jasons. Sir, let me come to this barbarian. Seeing the burly man, Longta suddenly became excited, and before Jason could say anything, he rose into the sky. Go to hell. The burly man's eyes, as big as copper bells, glared fiercely, and he punched Longtas. In his opinion, a small peak powerhouse of the Moonlight God only needed a little. If you punch him, you will be crushed by your own punch. Come here. Longtas shouted, his face full of excitement, and he also punched him. Boom. 2 huge fists collided directly in the void. Ugly big guy, you are looking for death. Because of Longta's liveliness, the blonde and fair-skinned young man has communicated with him the most in the past few years. Now that he saw this scene, he couldn't help but feel horrified on his face, and he didn't dare to watch what happened next. Scene. Bang. As if an iron rod hit a wooden stake, a dull sound resounded throughout the world. Rontas punched out, and the huge iron fist of the burly man exploded directly, turning into a blood mist that filled the sky. Bone stubble was scattered everywhere, and it was extremely bloody. What? Such an unexpected and shocking scene shocked everyone on both sides. Oh, it's really useless without fighting. Longta suddenly looked bored. Roar. The burly man's face turned red, and he roared suddenly. Countless divine powers gathered together, and his right hand returned to its original shape in the blink of an eye. At the same time, a huge mace suddenly appeared in his hand. It was 1 foot long, and it was covered with ferocious spikes. It was aimed at Rontas with a stick. Boom. When the stick fell, the sky collapsed and the earth shattered, the void exploded directly, huge waves surged into the sky, and terrifying energy spread across the 9 heavens and 10 earths. Using weapons? Grandpa, let me show you what it means to be domineering. Rontas showed no fear on his face, and even had a smile on his face. He turned his right hand and a giant hammer appeared, with divine light on it. It circulates, the energy is overwhelming, and it instantly turns into a windmill, waving it out directly. Bang! The giant hammer collided with the mace, and a dull sound was heard. The burly man suddenly retreated, and a mouthful of blood spurted out from his mouth. The robe on his body was instantly shattered, and at the same time, his muscles were cracked. Open it, and poof, blood arrows spurt out. It's boring, it's too weak. Longtas shook his head repeatedly with a very dissatisfied expression. With his strength in the late middle stage of the Sunyao God and about to enter the peak of the Sunyao God, it is really difficult to deal with the opponent, an island owner in the early stage of the Sunyao God. It couldn't be easier. YT and others, who had been so relaxed before and had sneers on their faces, all had dull expressions. I really didn't expect that you actually have a strong man in the middle stage of the Sun God. No wonder you are so arrogant. I was wrong. T said in a cold voice, however, today you all must die. T roared, second, third, fourth, let's join forces and kill that guy first. Boom. For auras representing the powerful sunlight god soared into the sky, and the boundless sea surged instantly. Under these auras, a stormy sea rolled up. The terrifying aura made Thomas and the others so depressed that they almost vomited blood and fell. They looked at the T5 people in fear, and also looked at Longtas, with despair in his eyes. This Longtas was strong, but could he alone be able to deal with the 5 powerful sun gods on the other side? However, what puzzled them was that the faces of the 6 Jasons, whether it was Jason, Longtas who had taken action before, or Chiji who were standing there quietly, had calm expressions on their faces, as if they were not the ones facing them. The 5 island owners of Black Rock Island are just 5 ordinary pirates. Sir? In the doubtful eyes of Thomas and others, Chiji and others looked at Jason at the same time, seeming to be asking something. I have already given them a chance. Since the other party is stubborn, you all should take action and fight quickly. Jason's indifferent voice resounded directly on the sea. The words fell boom. Each of Chi-Ji's 5 people had a monstrous aura emerging from them. These 5 auras soared into the sky and were astonishingly thick. They directly stirred up the thunder clouds and mist above the sea of thunder. Countless thunder and lightning fell from them, smashing them. The 5 people of Chi-Ji looked like gods coming out of the thunder. The aura of each of the 5 of them is extremely powerful, completely suppressing the 5 TIs. Even the weakest one is 1 point stronger than TIs who has reached the middle stage of Sunyao God, and the most terrifying Chi-Ji, far more than the 4 Longtas. The terrifying aura spread out, and Thomas and others present had the urge to worship. Oh my God, who are they? How can they be so powerful? Thomas and others were all horrified. The strength of the 5 Chi-Jis surprised them so much that it even exceeded their desire for survival. At the same time, he looked at Jason with his eyes, not even daring to guess Jason's identity. Unlike Thomas and the others who were surprised, T5 and the others were dumbfounded, almost unable to believe their eyes. The peak powerhouse of Sunlight God. The 5 of them looked at the majestic Chi-Ji, their voices trembling and their expressions dull. How can there be a strong person at the peak of Sunlight God among them? 1 Sunlight God is at the peak, and 4 are in the middle stage of Sunlight God. What is this kid's identity? Chi-Ji's power completely shocked the 5 people, and the gaze he looked at Jason was also full of shock. In the world of gods, the strong men at the peak of Sunyao God were already considered the top figures. Except for the generals under the major god kings, the masters of various palaces, and very few others apart from the invincible powerhouses of the sun god, the most terrifying ones are those who are at the peak of the sun god. Could this boy be the son of a certain palace lord? Even so, he wouldn't be able to have so many strong men follow him just for any job, right? The hearts of the 5 people in Tishi completely sank at this moment. The island masters all looked at Chi-Ji and the others in horror, with retreat in their eyes, while Tishi clenched her fists tightly, and her nails pierced into the flesh of her hands without even realizing it. He hates it. He was about to avenge his son, but the other party's background turned out to be so powerful. Don't worry, Zoming. Even if you fight for this Black Rock Island, my father will definitely avenge you. Ti's body, with a gloomy face, suddenly rushed towards Jason, and at the same time a handle appeared in his hand. A strange green long sword. Woo! A series of harsh wind howls sounded, and the sharp sound directly caused Thomas and others present to cover their ears in pain. Ti's eyes were filled with determination, and she slashed at Jason with a sword. In his opinion, the strength of Jason Yuehui God can't stop his sword. As long as he kills Jason, he can sink to the bottom of the sea and escape. At that time, he can gather the wealth of Black Rock Island and remain anonymous. This world it's so big that no matter how noble Jason's status is and how powerful his family is, he can't even hope to find him in the vast world of gods. Seeking death. Ti's actions made Chi-Ji furious. Endless and vast divine power surged, and he held a folding fan. Taking a step forward, the space seemed to be twisted and folded under his step. Chi-Ji stepped into the space and was in front of T in an instant. The folding fan exuding metallic luster drew a soft arc in the void, directly blocking the green sword thrust out by T. Chong. The two collided, T-Shi violently retreated, but Chi-Ji remained unmoved. Boom. The moment Tyr took action, Rontas and several others on the other side also fought together. The 4 deputy island owners no longer have any thoughts of fighting at this moment. The moment T started, they all soared into the sky, wanting to hide in the clouds and escape, but how could the 4 Lontas give them this opportunity? They rushed forward in a swarm and intercepted them. Boom! Deafening roars resounded throughout the world, and the battle between the 10 sun gods instantly caused the entire sea area to surge into the sky. It was a scene of the approaching doomsday, with waves of divine power spreading out, the sky torn apart, and the sea surface collapsing. Waves of divine power were transmitted down, and many marine creatures deep under the sea were shaken into blood mist. Some powerful marine creatures even floated upward with their white bellies turned over. The clouds above the Sea of Thunder were also aroused by this terrifying force, and streaks of silver lightning were as thick as mountains. Like silver dragons falling from the sky and chopping down the sea. Quickly retreat. Thomas and the others were so frightened by this scene that they retreated as fast as they could. Such a battle was simply beyond their reach. I was afraid that if they got even a trace of it, they would be stunned and fall instantly. Thomas and the others flew back far enough. They all stopped, and then looked at the scene in front of them with bated breath. Damn it! Looking at Chi-Ji standing in front of him, Tian felt angry in his heart. In that case, the divine power in Tian's body suddenly surged, a unique, mysterious flow. There was only a whoop sound, and more than 1,000 people suddenly appeared within a radius of 1 kilometer. Every Ti's expression is exactly the same, and there is endless release of divine power on his body. This is some kind of special mystery that is released by divine power, forming thousands of clones in a short period of time to confuse others. Among these thousands of clones, there is usually only one deity, but except for the deity, all the other clones are it has some of the strength of the original deity. Although you are strong, can you stop all my clones? Tian said ferociously, and as thousands of clones moved together, roaring towards Jason's location. This incarnation technique is rarely used except when escaping, because the strong person who can force him to perform this incarnation technique is usually stronger than him, and these clones only have a small part of the strength of his original self. Even if they are incarnations, tens of millions of people can't cause any harm to the opponent. On the contrary, every time a clone of oneself falls, the strength of the original body will be weakened, and the gain is not worth the loss. But now T doesn't want to fight Chi-Ji. He just wants to kill Jason. As long as one clone escapes the opponent's attack, he has a chance to kill Jason, so he risks the risk of his fallen clone. T showed her own incarnation technique without hesitation. Who? The Ti's clones all over the sky roared toward Jason like passing locusts. Humph. Chi-Ji sneered, and an invisible divine power suddenly emerged from his body. Buzz. With Chi-Ji as the center, the space laws in this void instantly became distorted, and actually shrouded all the clones of more than 1,000 days in it, and a large number of clones flew to the place where the space was distorted, suddenly unable to withstand the tearing of the space law. The body flying at high speed was like a snail, and could only fly in this area with difficulty. Just give up. In front of me, Chi-Ji, you can't hurt my family at all. Chi-Ji sneered, in my space domain, your clone can't resist the twisted space laws at all. Only I can barely resist in front of me. Sure enough, over 1,000 Ti's clones all seemed to be stuck in the quagmire, suspended in midair and struggling hard. Only Ti's original body could barely fly without control. You got your understanding and control of the laws of space are so strong. Ti's face was ferocious and crazy. At the same time, he flew towards the back and suddenly escaped from Chi-Ji's space domain, but the other clones were trapped in it one by one, like flies trapped in amber. Although the peak power of the Sunyao god has reached an astonishing level in understanding the laws of space, which is much stronger than the mid-level Sunyao god, Chi-Ji can trap more than 1,000 clones of himself just by relying on the space domain, and even his own body is crazy and controlled. This is the first time I have seen T. How did he know that the 5 Chi-Ji people had been trapped in Jason's god sword formation for 35 years, and they were exerting all their strength to use space void at all times? 35 years of uninterrupted display and understanding made them his understanding of space is far beyond that of ordinary experts of the same level. But if you can trap me like this, that would be ridiculous. T had a sneer on his face as he fled out of Chi-Ji's space domain. The next moment, his figure suddenly swayed, and he flashed to Chi-Ji in an instant. Far away from Chi-Ji's side, the body drew an arc, bypassing Chi-Ji's position, and then swooped towards Jason. The control range of the space domain is limited. Now that you are using the space domain to trap a large number of my clones, let me see how you can stop me. T growled. Is this a trick? Chi-Ji smiled lightly. His body blocked Ti's location like lightning, and to everyone's surprise, the trapped Ti's clones around him seemed to be bound by invisible threads, always wrapping them. In this realm of space, move with him as he flies by. In Chi-Ji's space realm, the thousands of clones seemed to have become a whole with him at this moment, and there was no way they could escape. How could this happen? T was originally confident, but after Chi-Ji stopped in front of him like lightning, his face changed in shock. How could my clone move with the movement of the opponent's field? T has never heard of the space realm being able to bind others to move with it. Although she was shocked, the ferocious look on Ti's face was even worse. The strange green sword in her hand was like a snake shadow, streaking across the sky with faint and misty cyan rainbows. This cyan rainbow came from the sword. The shot out of the body at a speed that was simply unimaginable, and in the blink of an eye it was in front of Chi-Ji. The demonic shadow strikes. T launched his strongest blow. It's ridiculous. Chi-Ji had a flat smile on his face, and the folding fan in his hand was blocked in front of him at some point. Wow. The folding fan suddenly blocked it, and bursts of bright brilliance burst out from it. These brilliants were dazzling, and the 5-color divine light washed across the heaven and earth, directly smashing the cyan sword rainbow struck by T. The 5-color brilliance spread out at the same time, illuminating the area of space controlled by Chi-Ji. Ti's original body was illuminated by the 5-color brilliance, and black smoke suddenly came out, and he let out a painful roar, and his clones were even more unbearable. Under the 5-color brilliance, they looked like sunshine. The white snow that fell was melting one after another. Damn it, I'll fight you, blow it up. A painful growl sounded, and T shouted loudly. Boom. All the remaining unmelted clones among the more than 1,000 clones exploded. In an instant, the sky collapsed and the earth shattered. The energy storm formed by the explosion of Ti's clones spread in all directions, and the terrifying energy storm swept Chi-Ji away. His body was completely annihilated in it. Although there was only a trace of energy spilling outside the space domain, the terrifying appearance still made Thomas and others in the distance change their expressions greatly, and they all retreated again. Huh. In the space realm, Ti's face looked crazy. His body suddenly moved, like a bolt of lightning, rushing out of Chi-Ji's space realm and heading straight for Jason. Seeking death. Chi-Ji's slightly angry voice rang out in the endless storm of divine power, and a figure quickly walked out of it, with a folding fan in his hand across the sky, like a bolt of lightning, striking directly on Ti's body. Ah! A painful roar sounded, and Tiru's deity was torn into pieces under this blow, and then another five-color divine light brushed through, directly evaporating Tiru's split deity into nothingness. Huh? Seeing this scene, Chi-Ji's face not only showed no joy, but also showed a look of shock, because after killing Tiru, he didn't even see the opponent's law chain, only a long one. The sword fell in the void. At this moment, in the void not far behind Chi-Ji, a black afterimage appeared in the void, and finally condensed into Tiru's embarrassed body. Tiru's face was ferocious and terrifying, and her eyes were red, and she rushed towards him crazily. Jason. What Chi-Ji killed before was actually not his true identity. Boy, even if I die, I will drag you to bury my son with him. Tiru's crazy roar resounded, and she rushed towards Jason as if she was fighting for her life. Not good. Danger. When Thomas and others saw this scene in the distance, their expressions changed drastically, and they yelled at Jason. Haha, die. How could Tiru give up the opportunity that he had lost most of his strength to seize, and desperately rushed towards Jason? Although he had lost a lot of strength, in his opinion, the attack was it is still easy to kill Jason, who is the moonlight god. As long as Jason can be killed, his loss is meaningful. In the end, he rushes to the bottom of the sea with his speed, and there is at least 5 levels of hope of escape. Quick, quick. Tiru accelerated and sprinted desperately. Jason's body was clearly visible in front of him. In order to really be able to confuse Chi-Ji, he even threw away the long sword that he had used for tens of thousands of years. A pair of big hands it condensed in the void and clawed hard at Jason's body. In the distance, Chi-Ji had an angry look on his face. He moved suddenly and was about to chase after him. However, suddenly, his body suddenly stopped chasing Tiru. Humph, you knew you couldn't catch up, why did you give up? Haha, if your master dies in my hands and you go back, you won't be able to eat anything good, right? Tiru laughed crazily in her heart, those bloodthirsty, crazy eyes looked at Jason and unleashed his strongest attack. Boom! The huge palm was like a pillar of heaven, grabbing Jason directly. At this last moment, Tiru stared at Jason carefully, as if she wanted to see his despair when facing death, but he was disappointed. Jason, who had been watching the battle from the sidelines, had no expression on his face and remained calm. I am neither sad nor happy, and there is no fear at all. Tiru, I killed your son, so let me send you on your way, so that you and your son can walk together on the road to hell. Jason's voice echoed in Tiru's mind. What? Tiru was stunned. Jason, who was standing quietly in front of him, suddenly opened his eyes. Whoops! 2 dazzling divine rainbows suddenly flashed from Jason's eyes, like 2 sharp swords that split the sky and struck hard on the palm of Tiru's huge divine power. Pfft! Like a hot knife cutting into lard, the 2 divine rainbows, containing terrifying sword intent, erupted from Jason's eyes and directly split the huge mountain-like palm into 4 pieces, and finally rumbling disintegrated with a roar. What? Tiru was stunned. Although he had only 30% of his own strength due to the explosion of a large number of clones, he was still a strong man at the level of the sun god. However, his previous full-strength blow was split into pieces by the 2 eyes of that kid. Such a fool. Die. Jason glanced at Tiru indifferently, and the black heavy sword behind his back suddenly appeared in his hand, stabbing Tiru as lightly as if he was waving a straw. Tiru, who was frightened by the scene just now, immediately ran away. She no longer had the slightest idea of killing Jason. She retreated crazily and sank, trying to rush into the sea. However, Jason's black épée was too fast, and it suddenly came to Tiru. No! Tiru roared unwillingly. Poof! His head was hit directly by Jason's sword, and it exploded. Tiru, die! In the void, a radiant law chain and a space ring were spinning, and Jason raised his hand and sucked it into his hand. This unexpected and shocking scene made everyone present dumbfounded. What? Thomas and the others all had dull expressions. After such a long time, they could barely accept the power of Chiji and the others. However, before Jason killed Tiru with a simple sword, but it made them even more shocked than surprised. That Tiru is a powerful sun god. From the beginning to the end, Jason has only shown the peak strength of the moon god. How come for a while, Jason not only surprised and confused Thomas and the others with his identity, but also with his strength. It also gave them an unparalleled shock. Boom! Ah! No! Not far away, several huge roars and screams rang out, and Longtas and the others also ended their battles. For them, the 4 strong early-stage sunlight gods were basically nothing. Negligible. Haha, sir, Tiru and the others were so arrogant, they didn't expect to hit the iron plate. Sir, you were prepared to spare their lives before, but they didn't appreciate it. They are really ignorant. Longta's loud voice rang out. At the same time, 4 space rings were delivered to Jason's hands, which belonged to the 4 deputy island owners of Black Rock Island. Jason smiled slightly, and stored it directly without checking it. A pirate organization had a lot of wealth, and they usually carried it with them, but wealth was nothing to Jason today. Several adults in the distance, Thomas and a group of people flew over. Everyone had a humble and respectful smile on their face, and their expressions were extremely restrained. Even if Thomas is a strong man at the peak of the sun gods, the Muya Chamber of Commerce is extremely powerful, they can only be respectful to such a strong man, and Jason's identity makes them all secretly shocked, because they know, Jason's level is simply beyond the reach of their group of powerful moonlight gods. Sir, it's all thanks to you this time. If it weren't for you, we would have thinking about it now. Thomas and the others all had a little fear in their hearts. However, when they thought that the 5 leaders of Black Rock Island, who were so famous in this Sea of Thunder and feared many forces and had taken a long detour, had all fallen just now, the shock couldn't help but hit their brains even more strongly. Okay. Don't say any more words of thanks. Now that the matter has been resolved, let's go directly. Looking at Thomas and the others' respectful expressions, not daring to show the slightest disrespect, Jason waved his hand and said directly. Yes. At that moment, everyone returned to the ship, and the ship that had stopped set sail again under the control of the Muya Chamber of Commerce, moving forward rapidly. In the distance, Jason could feel that the pirate ships that had been following them had already disappeared to nowhere. They were obviously going back to Black Rock Island. As for what kind of battle Black Rock Island will face next as a passerby, Jason was too lazy to care about the accident. There was silence in the cabin, and there was no more noise as before. Everyone couldn't help but glance at Jason and the others secretly, and their hearts trembled. But Thomas and the others were also happy because with the presence of masters like Jason, their ships could travel almost unhindered in the Thunder Sea, and they no longer had to worry about encountering any pirates. Although there are many pirates on the Thunder Sea, even the most powerful ships may be robbed, but as long as there is a powerful person at the peak of the sun god, even the huge pirate force will not dare to take action. The Thunder Sea is boundless and peaceful. During the journey, 20 years passed quickly after the battle with Tiru. Whoosh! The sea water was rippling, and the Muya Chamber of Commerce's ship was moving forward through the waves, while Jason was standing on the bow outside the ship, looking at the endless sea level. 20 years. Jason sighed softly, the god realm is really too vast. Just going to Thunder Island in the center of the Thunder Sea would take decades. Now that more than 20 years have passed, I'm afraid it won't be long. We'll be there in a while. In the past 20 years, everything has been calm. Jason and the others occasionally encountered bandits, but now that their identities have been exposed, Jason and the others did not pretend to be pretentious. Every time a pirate intercepted them, one of them, Rontas, will step out and unleash their own strength. After seeing a powerful sunlight god on the ship, the pirates were all scared out of their wits and pissed themselves. They didn't even dare to say big words and just quickly evaded people. Thomas also modified the original route according to the situation. Originally, they planned to go around some sea areas with many pirates, but now, with Jason's consent, in order to rush for time, they went straight through. Every time there were pirates, Rontas and the others showed their strength and traveled unhindered. In the past 20 years, there is another thing worth mentioning, that is, after Rontas and others accumulated during this period, the four of them actually advanced to the peak of the sun gods one by one. The horror that occurred when they advanced the momentum frightened Thomas and the others until their faces turned pale. So much so that later on, Thomas and the others looked at Chi-Ji and the other five with expressions as if they were seeing ghosts. The five peak powerhouses of the sun god. No matter where they are placed in the god realm, such a force is definitely the most peak existence. However, these five people are just Jason's guards. Thomas and the others dare not imagine that Jason sends true identity. However, Jason himself has always stayed at the peak of Moonlight God and has not made a breakthrough. On the bow of the ship, Jason stood there quietly, looking at the distant sky. Waves of waves, the endless dark sea water, and the faint flashes of lightning and thunder in the distance caught Jason's eyes and turned into the ingenious laws of nature. Jason looked at the boundless ocean silently, his eyes were deep, and his whole figure seemed to be completely immersed in it, perhaps for a long time. Maybe it was just a moment later. Jason's eyes suddenly lit up. Throughout the Thunder Sea, the waves suddenly surged, and waves of terrifying divine power surged from all directions, pouring crazily into Jason's body. Boom! A familiar law of the avenue came and enveloped Jason, causing Jason to float involuntarily. After more than 20 years of travel and immersion, Jason finally broke through the shackles of the Moonlight God and entered the realm of the Sunlight God. Boom! A huge roar resounded, and at this moment, the waves on the Sea of Thunder surged, thunder bursts in the sky, and a vast scene descended. What's going on? What happened? Such a terrifying scene also attracted the attention of everyone present. Thomas and others rushed out of the cabin and looked at Jason, suspended in midair. It's your lord. Is it possible that your lord is going to be promoted to the sun god? A trace of ecstasy flashed through the hearts of the five people at Chi-Ji at the same time. Since they became Jason's slaves and their souls were controlled by Jason, their fate has been completely linked to Jason. If Jason is strong, they will be able to enjoy more benefits. In fact, for Jason, Chi-Ji and the other five people are full of admiration and emotion. They can use the realm of Yuehui God to arrange a shocking and rare 6th-level formation. Such a character has countless billions in the world of gods. In the history of 10,000 years, it has almost never appeared. Regardless of the formation, Jason, who is the peak of the Moonlight God, can compete with Chi-Ji, who is the mid-level Sunlight God in terms of real strength alone. The fact that they fought to a draw was also sensational. Fortunately, Chi-Ji and the others didn't know Jason's identity as the medicine god. If they had known that Jason was one of the few medicine gods in the history of the god realm, they would probably all call him monster and faint. Retreat, retreat quickly. The color of the sky and the earth changed, and the extremely rich 5-element divine power flowed through the heaven and earth, like rivers of 5 colors. Silver dragons meandered in the void, thunder roared, and the waves set off one after another, reaching hundreds of thousands of feet high. It was terrifying, the scene shocked everyone, and the helmsman of the Muya Chamber of Commerce controlled the ship to retreat crazily. Such majesty looking at Jason, suspended in the air in the distance, a large amount of liquid five-element divine power poured into his body crazily. Chi-Ji and the others could clearly feel that the power radiating from Jason's body was increasing at a geometric level. Thick lightnings in the void were intertwined around him, and the thunder and lightning flashed, forming an immortal, unforgettable, shocking scene. Not only Chi-Ji and the others, but Thomas and the others were also stunned. Although they could not clearly feel the changes in Jason. But just from that vast scene, I can feel how powerful Jason is. You must know that before this, the laws that came when Longtas and the four of them broke through to the peak of the sun god were not as huge as Jason's promotion now. Laws flowed in the sky, covering Jason. The clouds above the Thunder Sea now formed a huge vortex, constantly rotating, reaching straight into the sky, and the sea below Jason. It also formed a huge tornado vortex, leading to the deepest part of the seabed. This moment. All things in the world surrendered to the figure in midair, and the laws of the Great Avenue roared, as if they were welcoming their own king. After a long time, all the visions disappeared, and only Jason was left floating there between heaven and earth. Is this the power of the sun god? Jason clenched his fists, and a feeling that was countless times stronger than before the promotion spread throughout his body. In the void, the laws of space appeared clearly, as transparent as a piece of glass. Although Jason completely controlled the sword array of the gods back then. He also has profound attainments in space, but because he is the body of Yuhui God, he knows what is happening but does not know why. It is like a mathematical problem. He knows how to solve it and what formula to use, but for he didn't know the principles of these most basic formulas, he only knew how to apply them. But now that he has been promoted to the sun god, all the laws of space have become clear, and simple in front of him, leading straight to their origins. Wow! Jason waved his big hand gently, and a void space suddenly appeared in the void. The illusory space laws were constantly twisting and flowing in his hands, as if everything in the world was under his control. The 5 Chi-Ji people who saw this scene were all stunned and completely frightened. You must know that even strong men like them who have reached the peak of the sun god cannot play with the laws of space so easily. In the palm of his hand, Jason, who had just been promoted to the sun god in front of him, did it, leaving them all at a loss what to say. Fortunately, Chi-Ji and the others also understood that it was not that they were not strong, but that their master was too strong. After the shock, they could still accept it. If other peak Sun Yao God masters saw this scene, I am afraid they would all be so ashamed that they wanted to commit suicide. Huh. In the distance, Jason turned around and took a step lightly, like a void transition. No one saw any trace of Jason's flight. The next moment, Jason had already appeared on the bow of the ship. Let's go. Jason's plain voice sounded, but it was like the Divine King's command, making everyone calm down involuntarily and start the ship. Wow! The waves were surging, and the Muya Chamber of Commerce's ship rode the wind and waves to continue its journey. Time flies, and 2 years have passed in the blink of an eye. Jason stood on the bow of the boat, feeling the wind blowing on his face. During this journey on the Thunder Sea, what he liked most was this feeling. Sir. Chi-Ji walked out of the cabin with a smile on his face. Sir, Thomas told us just now that we will arrive at Thunder Island, the destination of this trip, in less than 2 days. It's almost here. Really? Jason was startled, with a hint of joy on his face. The 25-year voyage is finally coming to an end. The Thunder Sea is vast and has many islands. In the past 25 years, so have Jason and the others. I passed some islands, but they were just a short stop to replenish some things. Now, 25 years later, I am finally reaching my destination, Thunder Island. In fact, this was the result of Thomas and the others changing their route after Jason and the others showed their strength. Otherwise, it would usually take 30 years to reach Thunder Island from the port of the wild ancient land. When we get to Thunder Island, let's go shopping first and rest for a month before setting off. Jason smiled and said to Chi-Ji. Traveling on the sea all year round is extremely boring. If you arrive on the island and head directly to the Sky Continent, although everyone can bear it, it will be too boring. And during this period of sailing, he also told Thomas and the others about the general situation of Thunder Island, and he also yearned for the prosperity of Thunder Island. Thunder Island is the most prosperous island in the northern part of the Thunder Sea. The entire island has a radius of more than 100,000 miles. It is a commercial center, connecting the two continents of Songcheong Continent and Linghuang Continent. It has strong people from various regions and flows. The population is extremely large, and a large number of businessmen and powerful people gather here every day. Its prosperity is even more prosperous than that of the main palace areas in some inland areas. This is quite surprising. An island that takes decades to reach by boat can actually be as prosperous as the main city in the inland area. This has to be said to be a miracle. Sir, when you get to Thunder Island, you have to let me, Longtas, have a good time. I have heard about Thunder Island for a long time, but I have never seen it. This time I finally have a chance. Longtas, the four people also walked out of the cabin and said excitedly. Sir, you must not let Longtas out. We have nothing to do. If you let this guy go, won't you get into trouble? Bahem curled his lips and said. Crazy Blade, what are you talking about? Longtas glared. Actually, I think Bahem is right. A rare smile appeared on the lips of Hades, who had always been cold. Okay, don't argue. It's okay for you to go out when we get to Thunder Island, but you have to restrain yourself and don't cause trouble for me. Jason said with a smile. In these days of communication with Thomas and the others, Jason and the others also understood the horror of Thunder Island. This Thunder Island, unlike other large islands, has godly generals under the command of the god King Thunder Death, but its terrifying level, but it is not weaker than those large islands. Thunder Island has various commercial centers that provide many merchants with exchanges, and there is an extremely powerful army inside to maintain some order on Thunder Island. This army is similar to the armies of the masters of various palaces. The weakest ones are you. Powerful god Hui Tian, Thunder Island has been extremely prosperous for countless years. Moreover, the order on Thunder Island is strict, and no one can disobey some places where hands are strictly prohibited. Even the soldiers of the major palace lords in the Thunder Sea must obey the order here. What is strange is that on Thunder Island, no one seems to have heard of which force it belongs to. Although no one knows why Thunder Island is so powerful and no one dares to offend it, anyone with a discerning eye should know that there must be an amazing force behind Thunder Island that can suppress the various forces that covet it. Don't worry, sir. We are not that reckless. Longtas said cheerfully, I heard that there are all kinds of things on this island, and there are all kinds of geniuses. I, Longtas, really want to see them. Ah. Jason nodded. He was quite relieved about Longtas and the others. Having once been the leaders of major forces, they naturally knew what could be provoked and what could not be provoked. If they didn't even have this awareness, I'm afraid before they could become sun gods, they would have already died in the cruelly competitive world of gods. Moreover, Jason was also reassured by the strength of Longtas and the others. Standing on the bow of the ship and looking at the sea in the distance, Jason couldn't help but feel a sense of expectation in his heart. The 2-day voyage passed by in the blink of an eye. Jason and the others all stood on the bow of the ship, looking ahead. Since yesterday, Thunder Island has appeared at the end of everyone's sight. It's just that the ship has been traveling for another whole day. Arriving soon. Looking from a distance, ships were coming from all directions, heading towards Thunder Island. The ships were so densely packed and so numerous that everyone couldn't help but be surprised. In addition to the arriving ships, there are also a large number of ships leaving Thunder Island at all times. Bang! A moment later, the Muya Chamber of Commerce's ship finally arrived at the port of Thunder Island. There is no fee to enter Thunder Island, and there is no inspection. As for the parking of ships at the port, it is up to Thomas and the others to discuss it, and it has nothing to do with Jason and the others. Let's go. After saying a simple goodbye to Thomas and the others, Jason and his team were the first to step out of the ship, go ashore, and set foot on this legendary island. Jason and his party landed on the island, and what caught their eyes was a scenery with an obvious island style. On the avenue outside the island port, trees stand in rows, like waiters greeting guests. Not far away, there are sea-view villas, full of exotic charm. Not far away in front of everyone is the city. There are bustling people entering and exiting the island, making it very lively. Haha, there are so many people here. It is really prosperous. As soon as they entered the city, everyone seemed to be in another country for an instant. A large number of people were walking on the streets. These pedestrians came from various regions, and the traffic was busy and prosperous. Among them were barbarian warriors with 2 horns on their heads, sea tribesmen with scales on their hands and faces, and some birds with wings on their backs. Of course, the most numerous ones were humans like Jason. In fact, these powerful men of various races can all change into human forms after reaching the god level, just like normal humans. However, people of each race usually like to retain some of the true colors of their own race, such as horns, scales, etc., for distinguish between their respective races. Sir, how about we find a place to stay first, and then take a good tour of Thunder Island? Chi-Ji suggested. Jason nodded, and the group of people immediately stopped paying attention to the shops on both sides of the street and walked quickly towards the city. On Thunder Island, because there are many merchants and warriors coming and going, the streets are mostly filled with various shops, followed by various restaurants and hotels. However, before arriving at Thunder Island, Jason and the others had already asked Thomas and the others about after passing it. I know that in this Thunder Island, there are only some small things and small restaurants on the outside. The real prosperous place is inside, and the most prosperous place is in the inner city located in the center of Thunder Island. It is the core trading castle on Thunder Island. Fighting is strictly prohibited in the Thunder Island trading market. Once discovered, the punishment is extremely severe, and there are only shops in it. Almost more than 90% of the people who come to Thunder Island will go to the inner city to have a look. In this inner city, there are all kinds of things in the outside world. Treasures that can be called rare treasures can be found everywhere here. Extremely luxurious. If you come to Thunder Island and don't go to the inner city, you will be ridiculed by others. Jason and others naturally knew the news and quickly headed to the inner city without stopping along the way. There is another strange phenomenon in Thunder Island, that is, the deeper you go, the higher the standards and luxury of the shops, restaurants, and hotels, and the places closest to the inner city are even more expensive. The buildings are all extremely luxurious. From a distance, Jason and the others saw huge and luxurious buildings standing in the distance. Let's go. Sir, let's go to this hotel and have a look. Longtas pointed to a large building in the distance. A hotel with an extremely rich classical flavor, he said excitedly. This hotel looked extremely majestic at first glance. When Jason and his party walked in, the entire hall was filled with light. The smooth slate paved on the ground was actually extremely expensive Tiancher stone. There was a small fountain in the center of the hall, and the fountain was gushing out. The water splashes everywhere, and there is a fragrant fragrance that makes people feel extremely comfortable. The water in this fountain is not ordinary spring water. It is elixir? Jason was surprised. Sir, this must be the first time for you to come to our hotel, right? Our Hilton Hotel is one of the most prestigious 7-star hotels on Thunder Island. The spring water in this pool is specially prepared by Barbaric, the elixir master. Prepared holy water. As soon as Jason and the other 6 came in, an enthusiastic waiter came forward and explained respectfully. Haha, not bad, not bad. Longtas and the others looked around and were extremely satisfied. How do you calculate this accommodation? A group of people came to the lobby service desk, and Longtas said carelessly. The beautiful woman with long golden hair and a bright fish scale inlaid between her eyebrows smiled and said, "Sir, our ordinary standard rooms can accommodate 500,000 sacred stones at a time, the suites can accommodate 2 million sacred stones at a time, and the private villas are 10 million sacred stones." Jason, Chiji, and Longtas were shocked. This is really not cheap. The law divine chain of a star god is only worth 10 million divine stones. You can only stay here once? Sir, our stay here lasts for 1 month. That is to say, no matter how long you stay in a month, it will be counted as once. Of course, if you stay for a month and a day, if you stay in a standard room, it will be counted as 1 million sacred stones. The beautiful woman said with a sweet smile. So that was it. Jason was slightly relieved, this time it represented a month instead of a day. But yes, it would take at least several months for a god-level powerhouse to realize something. If he stayed here for a long time, who could afford it? Jason and the others took a boat from the ancient wilderness to Thunder Island for 25 years. One person only has 1 million divine stones. A strong man like Xingyao Tianshan was already a well-known strong man in a small town in the ancient wilderness. Living in a private villa here for 2 months would probably lead to bankruptcy. Guys, are you guys going to check in? The beautiful woman looked at Jason and his group expectantly. If there are 6 of you, you can actually choose a private villa, which is totally affordable. Okay, let's take a private villa. Jason nodded. If it's 10 million a day, Jason will just turn around and leave. That's not how he spends his money. But if it's 10 million a month, they'll only be staying on Thunder Island for a month anyway. No matter what 10 million means to Jason, Sen or Chi-Ji and the others are nothing at all, insignificant. The beautiful woman's eyes suddenly lit up, and she quickly helped Jason and the others check in. They only have 20 private villas in the entire Hilton Hotel. Those who can live here are all powerful or noble. After all, 10 million divine stones a month, many powerful sunshine gods are not willing to spend this money to live in. 10 million a month, 1 year is 120 million, 10 years is 1,200,000,000, 100 years is 12 billion. For a god-level powerhouse with a long life, 100 years is just pass by with a snap of your fingers. After paying 10 million sacred stones and receiving a black number, Jason and the others walked to their residence under the leadership of the waiter. Standard rooms and suites are located in a large building in front of the hotel, and behind the Hilton Hotel building, there is a pleasant open space planted with a large number of rare trees, where 20 luxurious villas are located side by side. Jason and the others walked into their residence and pushed open the courtyard door. In front of Jason and the others, there was an elegant courtyard, in which the flower garden accounted for 1/3 of the area. Behind it is a quaint 3-story villa. Not bad, not bad. Longtas and the others were very satisfied. In this villa, you can even see some buildings in the inner city. The key is that the privacy is very good, the environment is beautiful and quiet. Sir, you live in the master bedroom on the 2nd floor, and we will live on the 3rd floor and the 1st floor respectively. There are many rooms in the villa, and everyone quickly selected their own rooms. The entire 2nd floor of the villa belongs to Jason, and the 1st floor belongs to Jason. It is inhabited by Hades, Longtas, and Thuras, and Chi-Ji and Bahem live on the 3rd floor. Sir, it's still early, let's go to the inner city for a walk. After choosing a room, Longtas shouted excitedly. That's fine. Jason smiled and nodded. He was also looking forward to this legendary inner city. Without wasting time, Jason and the other 6 set off immediately for the inner city. As soon as he entered the inner city, Jason clearly felt something different. In the outer city, it was very lively and noisy, but after entering the inner city, a serious atmosphere spread. On the street, patrols of warriors wearing black armor with strange red patterns can be seen everywhere walking back and forth. These black armored warriors are obviously the army of Thunder Island, exactly as Thomas and the others said. In that way, the weakest ones among them are the strongest ones at the peak of the Moonlight God, and some of the leaders who may be captains are actually the strong ones in the early stage of the Sunlight God, which is frightening. Fighting is not allowed in the inner city. Once discovered, it will face extremely serious consequences. In the inner city, tall castles stand tall. These castles are all trading castles. People come and go. Jason and the others were not familiar with the place, so they directly found a purple-black castle. They didn't know what purpose this purple-black castle was for. Whatever material it is made of, it looks luxurious from a distance, and the reason why Jason and the others chose this castle is because there is a purple flower imprint on the top of the castle called Amethyst Castle. The Hilton Hotel where Jason and the others lived also had the same mark, and they obviously belonged to the same force. Jason and his group walked into the Amethyst Castle. Because Thunder Island has extremely low taxes and is located in the middle of two continents, it has excellent geographical advantages. Countless merchants from the God Realm gather here, and countless guests come to the Amethyst Castle every day. This Amethyst Castle has a total of 8 floors. Guests can enter the first 6 floors. As for the last 2 floors, they are not open to external operations. As soon as Jason and the others entered the first floor, they were shocked by the flow of people. There are no restrictions in the inner city, so almost all tourists who come to Thunder Island will come to the inner city. Even if they can't afford it, people will be curious to come in and visit, which naturally leads to an extremely large flow of people. In order to attract these people, some merchants in the inner city castle, for a group of guests, what is usually placed on this floor are things that are not too expensive. Most of them are less than 100,000 divine stones, and there are even items worth several thousand divine stones. Even for middle-level spiritual gods and high-level spiritual gods, you can come and spend some money. Sir, there are too many people here. I heard that things are generally better and more expensive as you go up in this castle. How about we go straight up? Feeling the crowd around him, Rontas asked. He couldn't help but frown. Let's go up. Go directly to the 5th and 6th floors. That's where the good stuff will be. Jason nodded. They weren't wasting money. After all, everyone knows that the more expensive the price, the better the stuff. The items on the 1st and 2nd levels that high-ranking spiritual gods can snap up are almost equivalent to rubbish for Chi-Ji and his group of peak sunlight gods. Jason and the others squeezed through the crowd and continued up the spiral staircase. There were also a lot of people on the 2nd and 3rd floors, but starting from the 4th floor, the number of people gradually became less, but Jason and the others obviously saw it. As the layers get higher, guards wearing black armor can be seen everywhere. With so many guards, the guards on the upper level are really strict. Rontas muttered. That's natural. The wealth in this castle is extremely astonishing, but even if someone really robs something here, I'm afraid they won't be able to escape from Thunder Island. Bahem said with emotion, the reputation of Thunder Island, and it was not blown out, but slowly accumulated over countless years. No one dared to do anything here. As everyone said this, they arrived at the 5th floor of the Amethyst Castle. On the 5th floor, the Amethyst Castle began to be guarded. However, after sensing that Jason and the others were stronger than the peak of the Moonlight God, they were let go without even asking. In the God Realm, except for some special places, the strong ones at the level of Moonlight God can basically have unimpeded access. Jason and the others had just walked to the 5th floor, and what they saw was a spacious rotunda. In the rotunda, there were 60 excess shops, which contained some products, and the price of each item was extremely astonishing. The lowest one has tens of millions of divine stones, and the high one has hundreds of millions of divine stones. The average strong person can only look at it and cannot afford to buy it at all. There are far fewer people here than on the previous 4 floors. However, there are still a large number of people talking at the entrance of various stores and looking at the products one by one. Jason and the others walked past one by one, but soon they were disappointed. Although the items sold on the 5th floor were quite expensive, they were also extremely rare. There were various weapons, armors, elixirs, materials, and many other things. But for Chi-Ji and the others who are at the peak of Sun Yao Celestial God, these things have no effect at all. It was Jason who was an elixir master and an array master. On the 5th floor, I made a small move and spent hundreds of millions of divine stones to purchase 3 medium-grade magical medicines and some rare materials. Although Jason, who has reached the 6th level of Formation Master, can arrange formations at will, some truly large formations still require a lot of rare materials, such as the ancient sword god's sword formations. Without the 7-handled god, it is impossible to arrange a sword. However, things like materials are quite cheap. Like elixirs, middle-grade elixirs only cost tens of millions of elixirs. If it were formulated into elixirs, the price would be completely different. Unfortunately, for Jason, the god of medicine, although the elixirs placed in these cabinets were expensive, they were beyond his discernment. Let's go to the 6th floor. After walking around on the 5th floor, Jason and the others headed towards the highest floor. There are even fewer tourists on this 6th floor. As soon as Jason and the others entered, they felt a different atmosphere. This is the law divine chain of a fire sun god, worth 2 billion divine stones? The first thing Jason and his group came to was the counter selling the law god chain. Jason couldn't help but be surprised when he saw the items placed in the cabinet. The law god chains sold on the 6th floor are all of the sun god level. The cheapest among them is worth 1 billion god stones, and the most expensive law god chain is even worth 20 billion god stones, and Jason is still here. Next to the law god chain, I saw the label of this law god chain. It was the law god chain of the heavenly god realm after the death of a powerful person at the peak of the sun god, nicknamed the Slaughterer Demon. TSK, the things here are just right. Lontus's depressed expression finally became excited at this moment. After Jason and the others looked at the items in this law god chain store with gusto, they turned to the next one. Although the law god chain is precious, it is actually of little use. After all, those who can afford it are some strong men or the children of big families, and an ordinary moonlight sky god strongman wants to buy a sunlight god level law god chain. No matter how cheap it is, it still requires them to fight for countless thousands of years. As for the children of the big family, the elders of the family generally do not allow them to break through the divine chain of refining rules. After all, their future achievements will be limited in this way, and if that big family, the children of the family are really not talented, and families that can afford to buy the divine chain of sunlight gods law usually have powerful sunlight gods themselves, so they can hunt them instead of buying them. Next, Jason and the others visited a weapons store. The various weapons on the counter surprised Jason. After all, he had only been in the god realm for less than 100 years, and the various weapons almost dazzled his eyes. This shop is obviously doing good business, and many customers are here to watch. This long sword is actually worth 10 billion divine stones. Jason has no need for weapons. In the world of gods, generally strong people rarely replace their main weapons that have been nurtured for countless years. At most, they will buy some special weapons. It was a secondary weapon, so Jason just looked around casually as if watching the excitement, but the price of this long sword really surprised Jason. This long sword is completely black and looks very ordinary, but its price is indeed expensive among all the weapons in this store. What is the effect of this long sword? Is it so expensive? Several young strong men who also saw this sword couldn't help but asked. When the staff at the weapon counter heard this, he couldn't help but said, "This is the soul-destroying sword." If the powerful Yue Hui Tianshan Peak Master recognizes its master, he will be invincible at the same level. If some geniuses are lucky, and can even kill the strong ones in the early stage of the Sun Yao God. how is it possible? The young strong men widened their eyes and exclaimed, this weapon can allow the strong Yuhui god to kill the Sun Yao god, isn't it? Are you bragging? Bragging? The staff member sneered, if there is no such effect, how dare you price it so expensively? This long sword is the invincible sun god who studied the soul extremely deeply hundreds of thousands of years ago. The weapons of the strong man, refined by the strong man for countless years, contain unique, mysterious attacks. As long as they are hit, even the souls of the strong sun god will be damaged. Several young strong men's eyes lit up after hearing this. Just looking at the price, they shook their heads and left. Jason's heart also moved slightly. The weapons of many strong men did have this effect. It was a pity that at Jason's level, these external objects were nothing. The most important thing was himself. Chi-Ji and the others looked at each one and did not buy anything. For them, these things were of no use. The group continued to look at various products. Next, Jason and the others passed through the elixir area and other places. Unfortunately, the elixirs in this elixir area were only semi-divine elixirs at most, or close to the magical elixirs, but still far from the magical elixirs. Chi-Ji and the others had some. I was moved, but in the end I didn't take action. If a strong man at the peak of the sun gods wants to use spiritual potions to improve or help his own strength, he must have magical potions. The little effect of those sub-god potions will not be of much use in battle, and the price/performance ratio is too high. Low. Then Jason and the others came to the auxiliary cultivation items area. All the items here were used to auxiliary cultivation. There were some extremely strange items in the world of gods, but the prices were naturally extremely high. For example, a spice that can bring powerful people below the level of Moonlight God into a state of enlightenment. 1 gram is worth 10 million divine stones, and 10 grams is 100 million. There is also a liquid that can increase the strength of a person's soul, and the price is also astonishing. Huh? Suddenly, Jason saw something on the counter not far away, and his eyes lit up. This is a white crystal stone, extremely pure, with strong fluctuations of divine power on it, attracting Jason. Can this thing help people quickly improve their cultivation? Jason looked at the sign and frowned. At this moment, a woman in a purple robe at the counter saw Jason staring at the white crystal and couldn't help but smile and said, "This is called the Chaos Rough Stone, which is mined from the deepest veins of the Thunder Sea. It is extremely precious. This raw chaos stone contains amazing divine power, and it can be easily absorbed without refining. A piece like this can offset the hundreds of years of cultivation of Uexahuishan God without any side effects, but the price is very expensive. One rough stone of chaos is equivalent to 100 years of cultivation for the Moonlight God?" Jason was shocked. This rough stone is worth 50 million divine stones. Ordinary Moonlight God would not be willing to spend 50 million divine stones in exchange for 100 years of practice. For the Moonlight God, he said that the price was too high. A retreat might only last for tens or hundreds of years, but for Jason, this thing was really good. Is there such a crystal stone that the sun god can cultivate? Jason asked. Of course there is, but the price is even more expensive. The purple-robed woman brought Jason to the cabinet inside, pointed at a white crystal of the same size placed inside and said, "This chaotic rough stone is from the original stone vein. The Stone King contains energy equivalent to 100 years of cultivation by a sun god, but its price is 500 million sacred stones." 500 million sacred stones? You can give it a try. Jason nodded slightly, thinking in his mind. Give me one. In the surprised look of the purple-robed woman, Jason directly took out 5 million divine crystals, worth 500 million divine stones. The chaos rough stone was translucent, with streaks of white mist inside. It looked very beautiful. Jason held the chaos rough stone in his hand with his backhand, and at the same time used his divine power to absorb the energy inside. Chi-Chi. In almost the blink of an eye, the Chaos Stone turned into powder in Jason's hand. At the same time, a pure divine power poured into Jason's body. Jason could feel the early stage of the sun god in his body. His divine power was growing at an alarming rate. After the chaos crystal disappeared, the sunlight god's divine power in Jason's body suddenly became several times its original value. Jason's heart suddenly became excited.